The newer HTML5 stuff, like section, article, name, and all that, is there any specific differences we should know as opposed to div beyond like semantics? Or
it's at this point the main difference is that older browsers don't support them out of the gate. A lot of them are. Some of them have been in the works for a little bit longer. They end up being what's considered a block level element, and that is essentially what a div is. So if you look at this page, really what it's doing is it's turning a header into a div, and it's turning a section into a div, but not really. But when we look at this HTML, it's very clear that this is our header section, and our CSS can reference it that way. We have access to shims or polyfills, so for browsers that don't support these tags, they can run a little bit of JavaScript to bring that support to the browser. So we have access to those. If there's like an HTML feature that you want to use that doesn't seem to support as many browsers as you hoped, there's probably a polyfill or a shim for that. Any other questions before I keep moving? No? Cool. So inside of here, we've got our left column, we've got our right column. I would consider these to be articles, so I'm going to use the article tag. And it looks like they've got an image, a little bit of meta information, and a title. And the title is a link, so I know that's clickable. Looks like the image is clickable too. This is not. That doesn't seem quite right, but I'll just make the title clickable for now. So inside of our left column, let's create a couple articles. Come on. So our first article is going to have an image. It's going to have, let's call that H. So we'll have, so for headers, just kind of looking at what's similar here. We've got, looks like this is our biggest header right now. So this is probably our H1. This is probably our H2. So this would be probably H3. These look like they're maybe an H5 or 6. These would probably be the 4. So I'll make these a 6. Yeah, because we've got a 5 over here. So I'll make those H6s. Because we have so many different header levels, right? We have the H1s, H2s, H3s, H4s, H5s, H6. We want to make sure that not everything is an H1, right? Not everything's an H2. So being able to use the different header tags gives us more ability to be eloquent with our HTML, but also gives us more power when we get to the CSS level. So here I'll add, and let's see, looks like they're off to the side of the image, but I don't think we need to do any formatting for that, so I'll just do an H6. And for this one's hiding in public. So one thing you'll notice here is taking what they have here, this is all caps, right? And I chose to go not all caps. There's actually a CSS rule that will allow us to force caps on an element. This is more readable. If I made this all caps, it would have to stay all caps. If I ever wanted to make it not all caps, I would have to change my content. If I change it at the CSS level, I have more control over how this looks. I mean, that all caps thing is specific to how the site looks. It's not specific to my content. So really here I'm making a content level decision and saying readability can be masked by the CSS later on. And then we've got why privacy is actually thriving online. I'm just going to copy that. And this was our H1. And I also know that that's an anchor tag. And by setting the URL to the hashtag. This basically tells the browser that this is a in-page link, but since it doesn't go anywhere, it's not gonna reload our page. So this is just a placeholder link. I haven't set up a target for it to go anywhere. It's just gonna read as an HTML anchor tag, but it's not gonna link anywhere. So this is just helpful for putting things in place. Let me clean this up a little bit. For formatting, this is another Sublime Text thing. Let's say that I had some weird formatting here. Well, I won't show that to you. What you can do is you can select multiple lines, and the tab character and the shift tab character will indent and de-indent. I don't know. Your content. So this is really, really handy to help with that formatting.
Change the default character tab distance in years?
Right now it's set to 2. There's a little button down here on the bottom right where you can actually change it for the document, so you can indent using spaces or tabs, and you can say, for instance, I want my tab width to be 4. Clicking that will automatically jack it up. This is something you can edit in the user preferences for Sublime Text, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But if you look at the different preferences, you can see that's actually something you can do across all files. Also, really important, you have to make sure that you're saving your files. If you go to your browser and it doesn't look right, and it's because you didn't save your file, it makes you feel pretty foolish. Right up here on your tab, and you may not be able to see it very clearly, I have a circle. That circle means that this document is currently not saved. It has unsaved changes. As soon as I save this document, cancel, it's an X. That just means I can close the tab without worrying about it being saved or not. So make sure that you check that once you've made your changes. It becomes second nature to just do save. Every time you go to your process is Command S, Command Tab, go, and that's all the time it comes ingrained. But make sure that you're checking to make sure your document is saved. So let's add another article in here. And this will be our second article down here, image gallery. So I'm going to copy this. We'll have another image tag in here that I'm not putting any content in yet. We had our H6, and this was image gallery. And then we had an H2, right? I think that's what we decided. Yeah, this is H2, this is H2. These were, I think, H3s. So let's throw this into an H2. I'm just going to paste that in, bring it down. Set up another non-linking tag. Close that out. So now I've got a couple articles in here. I haven't really put anything into my right column, but I want to move on a little bit now to doing some of the basic CSS, so we can just look at some of the foundational stuff, and then we'll start to add more content as we go. So for this, we're pulling in the wired logo, so we might as well just pull in the images for the articles. So let's grab this image here. So I'll copy link address. I'm going to paste that in. And then I'll grab the link from this guy. Inspect element. Copy link address. And paste that in down here. All right. So already our content is taking shape. I mean, we've got all the pieces we need so far. We've got our header element with our logo inside of it. We've got our main content with a featured section that has 2 columns inside of it, our left col and our right col. And inside of our left column, we have 2 articles with an image tag a subheader basically, our main header, and a link with some text inside of it. And this is pretty readable. So if we were to give this HTML page to anybody who knows HTML, they'd be able to understand what we mean. Where are things going? What does this mean? Oh, well, here we go. Here's our featured section of the page. Done. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Whatever. It's not great. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to introduce a normalized CSS file. Has anybody heard of or used normalized CSS? No? So, we mentioned a little bit of cross-browser before. All browsers render content differently. Maybe kind of close, but not quite the same. I don't know if this will be super different in Firefox. We can take a look. No. So it's pretty close. There's a little bit of slight difference. It's kind of hard to tell. But fortunately, somebody has already done the majority of the grunt work for us. And they've created what's called a normalized CSS, which tries to take some of those browser differences and normalize them. So we're going to grab that from a CDN, a content delivery network. And the benefit of this, like I was saying before, is that if my site uses the reset or the normalized CSS and your site uses normalized CSS, we benefit from cross-caching, right? Like I might cache the file, which means that your site will also load from the cache as well because they're coming from the same source. So one of the popular ones is cdnjs.com. You're going to find a whole lot of stuff on here. So we're looking for normalize. And here we've got normalize version 3.0.1, normalize min.css. So I'm just going to copy this. Another nice thing about this site is if you actually click on the library, it shows you all the previously set up versions. So if you have a specific version that you want, you can grab it from there. In this case, we don't really care. We just want the minified modern version of this. So I'm going to copy that. And because it's a CSS file, I'm going to include it in my header as a link tag. And the href is going to be pasting in that URL. Now, one thing to notice is that, and you'll probably see this a lot, there's no HTTP : or HTTPS : or file : or anything like that. There's no protocol for this URL. And the reason is that when this is on the web, in the browser will see that there's no protocol specified and it'll use whatever the current page is using. So if I save this as it is, and I go and I view my page, it's not going to change anything. Nothing's changed. So I'll open up my developer tools, and I'll see I'm getting an error. It couldn't find file : cdnjs.cloudflare.com. So it's assumed that I'm talking about file : even though I'm not. So when we're working with the file system, the local file system, while you're just making basic HTML pages and we have no server involved, you have to specify the protocol. When you're at the server level, it saves us some time because there is the secure HTTPS, right? So that's encrypted communication between the client and the server versus HTTP, which is unencrypted. We don't want to have to change that if we're changing our URL, right? That'll be at the URL level, not the site level. So we don't want to have to go through all of our pages and change it from HTTP to HTTPS. So just the // means that we can use either. It doesn't care. Right now it's assuming file, which is not quite correct. If we were at http://wired.com versus HTTPS, it would pick whichever one we were at, and we wouldn't have to change our code for that. So that's kind of a brief intro into why you'll see that //. But if you ever get this error, file not found, and you see that it's looking for the file system, just go back and add the HTTPS, or HTTP, sorry, HTTP colon before the // and now it will actually look for a web address as opposed to a local address. So let's see how this looks. I'll close these down a little bit. Actually, we can move this to the side. Aha. Reload. And there we go. So it looks like it took out some of the weird padding. Everything is now sans serif. And it should be relatively consistent. I think I closed Firefox. But this is just a good way to kind of make sure that you're starting thinking about some of the cross-browser issues. You're taking advantage of a style sheet that someone else has created to consider some of the differences between how things are rendered in different browsers. So it's a great place to start. And I can see it's included in here. If I want to see the actual file, I can right-click and go directly to the file. It's pretty small, but it's very helpful to kind of keep things consistent. Any questions about that? Cool. All right, so let's start with some styling here. Oops. So I've already created my main CSS file, and the reason that I'm doing that, I could put all my CSS in line, right? Like we could do element level, we could do a style, right? And we can put our styles right in here. We could do a style sheet right in our header. We can set that up that way. But we don't really want to do that. Does anybody know why we don't want to do that?
So you can use it on other pages?
That's one good reason, yeah. Usability on other pages. We would have to copy and paste our code across those pages. The other is the idea of separating our concerns here. We're writing CSS in HTML. I mean, that's fine. We can do it, but it makes more sense to write CSS in a CSS file and write our HTML in an HTML file, write our JavaScript in a JavaScript file. In some cases, that's not always true. Sometimes you have a little bit of code that is a style that needs to be on your HTML page. You got to make a decision there. But really, you want to try to make sure that you're not cramming all of your content into one page, one HTML page. Considering that, we want to make sure that we're not trying to do this at too deep of a level. We're gonna try and be very clean and clear with how we set things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to link to my main CSS file that I've created. So here it's a style sheet, and my URL is relative to where the HTML file is. Because they're on the same level, my index.html is at the same level of main CSS. I'll just throw main CSS in here, and it should look directly in the same directory for main CSS. So I'm going to reload the page just to make sure I'm not getting any errors. Doesn't look like it. I'll check my network tab, make sure it's coming in. Here's main CSS getting loaded in. And the response has no content, so that means there's nothing in my file. So at least I know that it's working. And now I've got to define some sets inside of my CSS.